Have you ever wondered why so many borders look like someone drew them with a ruler? Here's why. These straight lines weren't shaped by geography, but by politics and colonial decisions made in faraway rooms. Let's zoom in on a few. Here's one example. In 1884, European powers met up in Berlin to decide how to carve up Africa amongst themselves. A few years later, this part of Africa was split between British, French, Portuguese, and German colonies. These new borders cut across existing ethnic groups and natural features. They were simply drawn with a ruler. The result? Dozens of modern conflicts. Here's another example. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire was crumbling. In 1916, Britain and France secretly agreed to carve up the Middle East. This map is called Sykes Picot. It drew straight lines across the Ottoman lands. Those lines split communities and continue to shape instability today. But not all straight lines have caused so much trouble. Here's one example of a border that brought stability. For centuries, the United States and Canada had a vague border here in the north. It was basically whatever this river is over here. But in the 1840s, Americans and Canadians decided to sort it out. They agreed to use the 49th parallel as their border. That's a line of latitude. And it runs for thousands of kilometers across forests and mountains. If you look closely at the border markers, you can see that they don't follow the rivers. They cut across the terrain because the 49th parallel cuts across the terrain. This didn't cause conflict because there were different ethnic groups or resources on either side of this border. It was just a convenient line to use. So when we look at all these straight borders, it's important to remember that they're not natural features. They're human creations. They're lines drawn on a map by people in power. Sometimes these lines divided people and caused conflict. Sometimes they were used to separate countries peacefully. Either way, these straight lines are a legacy of our past that we continue to deal with today. They remind us that borders aren't just lines on a map. They're lines in the sand that can separate communities, cultures, and countries. And those messy problems caused by these straight lines continue to make headlines around the world. If you want to see more stories from the world's strangest borders, subscribe for more. When you think of maps, you probably think of lines. Lots and lots of lines. But did you know that some of the world's most powerful countries have no borders at all? That's right. These 7 countries have no borders, but why? There are 2 landlocked countries in South America, 1 in Africa and 4 in Europe. All of them are small, but they're missing something. None of them have an official border. It might sound like a mistake, but it's by design. These countries don't need borders because they've agreed to share everything. San Marino has no borders inside Europe. The tiny Italian Republic is surrounded by Italy. Its people and government are Italian, so why isn't it just part of Italy? Well, San Marino has always been independent. They even helped design Italy's border. And then there's Lesotho. This small country is entirely surrounded by South Africa. But Lesotho's capital is one of the highest in the world, while South Africa's capital is one of the lowest. There's a big difference in culture too. So South Africa respects Lesotho's independence. Then we have the 4 Nordic countries, Iceland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. They all share a border with each other, but they don't need one. For hundreds of years, these countries have relied on trust and cooperation instead of walls and fences. But why does this work? Well, these countries are small enough to be equals. They have similar cultures and values, and they all benefit from being part of the same region. So instead of fighting over borders, they focus on working together. They share roads, hospitals, and even currencies. This makes life easier for everyone and helps keep the region stable. That's why if you look closely at any map of the world, you'll see that some lines are blurry. Some borders aren't meant to separate us. They're meant to bring us together. This is a special edition of a geography series. Now check out this playlist for more stories about the world's strangest borders.